Humanity is blinkered. We know that we're the top dog, the most intelligent species on our planet. And this view of ourselves is being constantly reinforced as technology advances at a faster pace than ever before. We have smartphones, so we must be smart. Humility has always been as rare as common sense. It's buried under a load of arrogance and self-preoccupation. As we've said throughout this series of films, what's standard is quickly normalised, taken for granted. We're learning more and more about the universe. A major discovery happened just 30 years ago when the first planet was found beyond our solar system. Since then, thousands have been identified, known as exoplanets, and it's estimated that there'll likely be hundreds of millions or even billions of them in our own Milky Way galaxy. And there are probably between 100 billion and 200 billion galaxies in the universe. Some academics confidently assert that life only exists on our planet and nowhere else. Others think there'll be microbial life elsewhere, but our intelligence might be a unique quirk of evolution. Thankfully, a few are willing to say that this all sounds arrogant, that what's happened here on Earth isn't special, nor an extremely rare occurrence. The search for life elsewhere is beginning, tentatively. It's possible that microbial life might be found within our own solar system, perhaps beneath the surface of Mars, in the acidic clouds of Venus, or within the subsurface oceans of moons around Jupiter and Saturn. We don't yet know. The James Webb Space Telescope will soon be looking for biosignatures further afield. There's even discussion about us one day possibly finding technosignatures beyond our world, indicating other civilizations. At some point, humanity will get a shock, a jolt, a wake-up call. Intelligent life will sooner or later be confirmed to exist throughout our galaxy and the universe. And a lot of it will almost certainly be way, way ahead of where we are, both technologically and evolutionary. Most people consider us to be civilized. We don't. We think of humanity as only being semi-civilized, intelligent, but still a bit primitive or barbaric. We're aggressive, hurtful, irrational, uncaring, contradictory, hypocritical, and so on, as well as being capable of love, kindness, consideration, creativity, and more. It's an odd mix of cleverness and stupidity. There's a disconnect between our technological capability and the stuckness of our psychology, although this is usually ignored. We don't need to wait until we get definite answers of what's out there, a long way beyond Earth. The nudge to grow up will most likely first come from much closer to home. Sadly, I'm not talking about all the harm we inflict on ourselves, one another, and the animals which share our planet. This horrendous suffering and misery should be enough to prompt a massive call for change. But it's shockingly normalised, accepted as part of how life is, viewed as difficult or impossible to stop. People individually feel powerless, as the problems are often huge, and governments invariably drag their heels when it comes to solving most issues, more intent on maintaining the status quo. The nudge I'm talking about will be the realisation that we're not alone, that we're being visited by advanced extraterrestrials. There's not yet absolute proof, but the compelling and mounting evidence is clearly pointing in that direction. By now, you'll know I'm not a nutter. You'll also appreciate I have no time for fantasy or distraction, nor any kind of distortion of reality. I'm always urging the need for rational thinking and exactness, and an evidence-based approach. So I'm trusting that you won't immediately put me in the band of tinfoil hat UFO believers. Props aside, those who spread silly stories of grey aliens abducting people during the night for some dodgy hybridisation project. We can put all that nonsense to one side and focus on the sensible stuff. There have been many cases over the past 75 years of unidentified craft seen in the skies above us. Occasionally, some have been reported to have briefly landed. Towards the end of the Second World War, military pilots called them Foo Fighters. Then, in the late 1940s and 50s, they were called flying saucers. Afterwards, the term UFOs was adopted, unidentified flying objects, first used by the US Air Force. Recently, UAP has become the preferred name, unidentified aerial phenomena. For decades, the media has treated UFO reports as something to giggle at and ridicule. Commercial and military aircraft pilots, plus other professionals, have been aware of this stigma or taboo, although some still spoke out about their strange sightings. Now, for the past 5 years, the media's attitude has noticeably changed. It began in 2017 when the New York Times reported the Tic Tac encounter of 2004, witnessed by US Navy pilots, with accompanying video further confirmed by radar data. We wrote about what happened in an article called Too Real to Ignore for our website project evolvefirst.org. There'll be a link in the description below. We've also written an article saying that witness testimony isn't enough, even if it sometimes gets close to being convincing, because it's well established that people can and do get things wrong, such as witnesses at a crime scene. However, the sheer weight of what many reliable professionals claim to have seen has grown larger and larger over the years, and there is corroborative evidence, if not yet quite enough to be absolutely sure. The US government is now taking this UFO or UAP matter seriously, with senior officials and even past presidents making statements supporting the idea that something unusual is going on. They're actively and systematically investigating, at last. An international group of scientists, led by Avi Loeb of Harvard University, are trying to get a clear photograph and other unambiguous data of what sometimes appears in the skies above us. Again, we've written about this Galileo project on our evolvefirst.org website. Many intelligent individuals are now starting to consider the important questions of where are they from and what do they want. We think we know the answer to this all-important matter of why are they here. You know we're urging a shift of psychological paradigms, from the current ubiquitous selfishness to the much better alternative of non-selfishness. To us, this isn't idle speculation, it's our practical work. It's what we do every day, and we've been doing it for over 40 years. But, looking and thinking wider, we're as sure as we can be that these two basic psychologies will be common to all intelligent life forms anywhere and everywhere in the universe. And these are the two basic starting points. Some might argue for a third option, a hive mentality like with ants or bees, but this isn't a psychology. It's just biochemical interactions. We're not saying that both options are equally as common. They won't be, because it's not like that. Selfishness will undoubtedly always emerge first, as the initial psychological starting point for any emerging intelligent species. Biological separateness will inevitably trigger the psychological equivalent. Non-selfishness follows, marking the true beginning of a healthy civilization. In other words, selfishness can be thought of as adolescence and non-selfishness as adulthood. Selfishness is a stage of evolution. To repeat, the mark of a semi-primitive, intelligent emerging species. Non-selfishness is the mature psychological state, with a huge range of expression, with selfishness being subnormal or immature. Once you consider this wider perspective on life, it's easier to grasp what's going on. First, it's just evolution. Not the biological type as before, because it's now a matter of education that's required to get us to the next level. Survival of the fittest got us here, but it'll next boil down to survival of the smartest. Selfishness is mixed, neither bad or good, but it's ultimately dysfunctional and problematic. It fucks things up. So we need to get better, smarter. As we've seen, changing isn't a simple matter of knowing what will increase our capability. That pesky avoidance syndrome makes it 100 or even 1,000 times harder. Our brains are hardwired. Therefore, existing habits aren't easily or quickly changed. There's been a long history of failure when it comes to the noble aim of fundamental change. We've given a name to this historical and present difficulty. We call it the Great Hurdle. But fundamental change is nevertheless definitely achievable, and we know how to bring it about. So there's compelling evidence for UFOs or UAP. Yes, perhaps the origins of these craft might hypothetically be from a different dimension or time frame, but that's wild speculation. If they're physical and solid, as the data strongly suggests, the more obvious conclusion is that they come from another planet. The distances between solar systems is immense, and there's seemingly a problem with faster-than-light travel. But we're still just part way along the path of discovering what's possible to do. Anyway, why are they here, and what do they want? This is where our understanding of psychology usefully kicks in. If they're from one or more advanced civilizations, their psychology will be non-selfish. So any worries that they might want to conquer our planet, killing or enslaving us, can be forgotten. Such a silly or immature scenario is best left to Hollywood and conspiracy theorists. The evidence of the past 75 years overwhelmingly supports a peaceful intent. We're the aggressive species, not them, and displacement only muddies the otherwise clear water. Let's go a step further. These extraterrestrials won't want anything. They'll be way ahead of such pettiness. Again, the projections of human selfishness won't get us to any reliable answers. They'll know we're at a potential tipping point. On one level, there might be some concern that we now have weapons of mass destruction. We've reported on the Evolve First website that UFOs have clearly taken an interest in nuclear missiles. Our best guess is that we're only a threat to ourselves, however, and not to them. So we have to look beyond the fact of our technological progress, bringing us back to psychology, which underpins almost all of our behaviour. The shift from selfishness to non-selfishness will be the pivotal moment in evolution. It marks the real beginning of a mature civilization. It's when togetherness can happen, not as a temporary, limited or convenient closeness, but as a constant. It signifies true reliability. It will most probably take humanity hundreds of years to make this fundamental change in attitude. We know exactly what it is, what's involved and how to achieve it. But almost everyone remains either disinterested or doesn't have much of a clue. We know we're pioneers with the mother of all uphill battles. Getting billions of people to see sense is an almost impossible task. We're under no illusions. But such a shift in perspective won't happen by accident, and an educational initiative has to start somewhere. What's facing us, with increasing urgency, will be of huge interest to advanced civilizations. We don't know what they'll actually call it, but we've named it the event. It's our opportunity to grow up. Time is like space. It's beyond words like vast or humongous. We can't really get our heads around such a huge scale. But because it's so immense, we can be reasonably sure of another thing. What's happening here on planet Earth will be a rarity at this particular time, probably a one-off, happening nowhere else in the Milky Way galaxy, and likely not even in the immediate neighbouring galaxies. It'll have almost certainly occurred many, many times before, and it'll happen again, elsewhere, on other planets in the future. But, here and now, it's us who are on the spot, and in the galactic spotlight. There'll be caring engagement with what we're doing and not doing. They'll be urging us on, watching and waiting, without blatant interference. They won't save us. That's up to us. It's our responsibility to sort ourselves out. They'll know from early examples elsewhere that any premature open contact won't work. It would just add fuel to the fire, complicating the existing mess. You have to be sufficiently mature for there to be proper dialogue and other worthwhile interactions. any emotional imbalance and they'd soon get blamed for all kinds of things. When there's selfishness, there's us and them, which equals a scapegoat opportunity. As they won't be stupid, they'll know to keep their distance, whilst rooting for our noble qualities to emerge more and more. The governments of America, China and Russia, the superpowers, will be most interested in UAP in case they can glean any military advantage over one another through insights into advanced technology. And they won't be eager to face embarrassing questions from the media about being impotent against craft from elsewhere which have superior capabilities. Time will tell, but more information will likely remain classified than shared with the public. If the reality of UAP is confirmed by government or the scientific community, most people will merely shrug their shoulders and carry on as before. Others will loudly proclaim, "I told you so." The media and commentariat will become experts overnight. Financial markets, which wobble whenever anyone says boo, might get the jitters if any news of extraterrestrial visitors is dramatic. As you'll know by now, existing habits usually dominate. The good news is that a small percentage of people will be prompted to think more, realising that behavioural change has to happen before any open contact. Practically speaking, an appreciation that humans are still backward, immature, won't do much. Anyone wanting to unlock their human potential will still need accurate know-how to get anywhere meaningful. Our organisation is purposely small, at least for now. We know that it's important to first get the ball rolling properly with a handful of individuals, role models. We've made our knowledge of how to change freely available to anyone, anywhere, via this series of 42 films on YouTube. But it's buried within a massive heap of millions of other films, like a needle in a haystack. We'll be returning to this topic of extraterrestrial life and UAP in a mini-series later in the year, going into more detail. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button below and the bell. Then you'll get a notification when they're released. Okay, that's it for now. We'll be looking at love and intimate relationships next. I'll see you again soon.